Better Call Saul and its predecessor Breaking Bad are two of the most oddly prolific shows in modern popular culture. Okay, it's not odd that they're prolific. The shows are fucking amazing and totally deserve their place in popular culture. It's just the way in which they're prolific that's odd. Because nested upon these generally dramatic, often dark, but sometimes comedic shows is this hyper-ironic internet community that enjoys taking these extremely well-rounded and dynamic characters and just completely debasing them of said character, boiling them down into a whole new animal entirely. But what I find the most compelling about some sectors of this online community, particularly surrounding Better Call Saul, is their fixation on one thing. Generally, the discourse surrounding feet with the show is centered on the character of Kim Wexler. You can find entire compilations of all the times her feet have appeared on screen. And I suppose, as the main supporting character and love interest of the protagonist, that it makes sense for her to be the main target for foot-related conversation. But let it be known, many other characters in the show have some very noteworthy pairs of feet as well. In fact, feet are so prominent and universal that they become a repeating motif to those who observe. That hints at something deeper, something I consider to be at the heart of Better Call Saul. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here, just bear with me. Things will make sense in due time. While it'd be ridiculous to try and boil down all the deeper meaning and symbolism and whatever of something as vast and complex as Better Call Saul into a singular theme, I do think I've identified a concept which encapsulates most of the characters on the show, and one which I can make a decent argument for, and that's connection. All throughout the show, we see characters struggle to connect with others, and as the series goes on, you notice they often grow together and, even more often, apart. The relationship between Jimmy and Kim is a perfect example of this, as it weaves the importance of connection throughout the series and holds a genuine stake in the story. But shit, every TV show and movie has like relationships and connections, right? That's like a universal thing. Let me do you one better and give you something more specific to this show. Chuck McGill. Chuck is a complete fucking loser. He has a medically vague condition which he describes as an allergy to electricity, to the skepticism of every other character, because that's not something that actually exists. What his allergy really is, though, is a delusion. He's not actually allergic to electricity, rather he has an irrational sort of anxiety about it, but he's convinced himself that it's a physical allergy because he doesn't want to admit that he's mentally ill, since he sees himself as an intellectual and can't accept the idea that his mind is going. There are theories that Chuck's superstition about electricity is linked to Jimmy and his behavior, and this is even alluded to in the show.
Whenever you think I've done something wrong, something questionable, you get worse.
But as we learn more about Chuck, we get to see that his mental health is more so tied to his relationship with his ex-wife Rebecca, whom he is said to have divorced shortly before his symptoms emerged. Chuck's disdain for his brother isn't just based on his lax relationship with the law, that's more a cover story. In reality, Chuck is deeply jealous of Jimmy. Despite the fact that Chuck, as an accomplished lawyer who
worked my ass off to get where I am,
seems to do everything right, and Jimmy, as a sleazy con man who
defecated through a sunroof,
seems to do everything wrong, people still seem to like Jimmy more. While Chuck is obviously more accomplished and dignified, Jimmy is just more fun, sociable, and warm than Chuck has ever been. You can see this jealousy flare up at certain points, but a scene I'd like to highlight is the time Jimmy starts telling lawyer jokes at Chuck's house to Rebecca's amusement. This is shortly after Chuck bailed Jimmy out for his Chicago sunroof incident, so Chuck is baffled that his wife, a particularly sophisticated woman, accepts Jimmy despite his mistakes. You can see him try to win back his wife's affection in the scene right after, when he awkwardly tries telling a lawyer joke himself.
What do you call 25 attorneys buried up to their chins in cement? Not enough cement. What?
She divorced his ass within a week. But hey, why is Chuck so afraid of electricity in particular? He's never established to have had any traumatic events related to electricity or anything like that. Like, there was no incident that caused him to be afraid of electricity. So why is that the thing he's so afraid of instead of like the CIA or minorities or something like that? Now, I'm not an electrician. In fact, I barely know shit about it. So forgive me if I'm misunderstanding it in some way, but in its essence, electricity works based on natural laws of attraction, positive to negative, that sort of shit. It is the connection between two electrically charged objects that spurs the flow of electricity. Connection. You'll notice then that Chuck's condition tracks with his relationships with other people. It begins after his divorce with Rebecca, but it improves as he gets therapy, returns to work as a lawyer, and reestablishes his relationship with HHM. Then, in a dispute with Howard over his refusal to retire, given he's an older, mentally ill man, Chuck destroys his relationship with both Howard and the firm with a threat to sue them. After this, his condition worsens and he becomes homebound once again. Then, in their final meeting, Jimmy comes to try and make amends for the absolute storm of shit that's happened between them, but Chuck is hellbent on shutting Jimmy down.
I don't want to hurt your feelings. But the truth is, you've never mattered all that much to me.
With that, Chuck has succeeded in cutting out every important person in his life and has condemned himself to solitude, and it's at this point that he full-on relapses. Chuck's mental illness is the manifestation of his failure to connect with other people, and now that he's pushed everyone who's ever cared about him away, it takes full control of his life. Now, I know what you're thinking. What the fuck does any of this have to do with feet? There's a bit towards the end of season 1 where Chuck, distracted by a new case, absentmindedly walks outside, exposing himself to all of the electricity that he's supposedly been allergic to. Only he has no reaction at all. Remember, before this, he was scared to leave his house, so him realizing that he can just exist outside is one of the first major steps he takes to improve his mental health and rekindle his connection to society before his eventual relapse. That being said, look what Chuck does.
When was the last time you did that? Feels good, right? Yeah. Grass between your toes. Feels nice. Yeah.
At the request of Jimmy, he lets himself become vulnerable and connect physically with nature by touching grass. This is my argument. Feet are the language through which Better Call Saul characters express intimacy. In a show where characters are always clashing and falling out with one another, feet are the counteractive force that brings them together. A lot of the runtime is spent with people in suits sitting at tables or people with guns facing off, so to have moments where characters pop those biggies out, it really shows another side of the coin. There's something awfully candid about being barefoot. It's humble, down to earth, and it's the sort of thing you'd only do when you're in an environment where you're comfortable exposing yourself to the people around you. But the road goes both ways. As the feet giveth, they may also taketh away.
Do you have anything else?